Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Ashley, and we explore the intersection between personal development, spirituality, and science. And I'm super excited for my guest today. I was on her podcast. We had a great conversation, so I invited her to come on to mine to continue it. First, a couple quick announcements, though. Head over to the links in the show notes. You'll find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. You'll find some free downloads, my free masterclass that I give about once a month, and also links to follow me and connect on social media. Check out my courses and coaching. Please stay connected. Hi, I'm Chris. When I was younger, I went through trauma that caused me to feel broken and lost. But my life changed after I had a spiritual awakening. Since then, I've dedicated my life to studying and learning from masters all around the world that have helped me to create a life of fulfillment and abundance beyond my wildest dreams. Now I'm dedicated to sharing everything I've learned so that you don't have to suffer for decades like I did. I've seen people's lives completely transformed, and I share it all right here. All right, so with me today, I have AmyLee Westervelt. So as a certified clinical hypnotherapist and master neuro-energetics practitioner, AmyLee pulls from her extensive knowledge to create powerful coaching experiences for each of her clients. As the founder of Gratitude and Glamour, AmyLee has the gift to not only see your potential, she has the compassion and patience to help nurture your gifts into the world for all to see. In 2022, AmyLee founded the Erogetics, you'll have to pronounce Erogetics, let me know if I said that wrong, discipline through Erogetics. Did I say that right, Amy? Okay, amazing. AmyLee helps her clients reconnect to their inner masculine lover so they can create and receive their deepest desires. I'm excited to talk about all of that. So welcome, AmyLee.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. And you're right, we did have so much fun on my podcast, so it only made sense for us to come and do it again on yours.
Yeah, totally. It was one of my favorite conversations I've had on a podcast, actually. So I always start my episodes the same way, and that is by asking my guests their origin story. So tell us, how did you get started on this path? How'd you become a coach? How'd you get into all of this?
Oh my goodness. I feel like coaching, and I think you'll agree with me on this, but coaching is more of a vocation than a job. It's interesting because during the pandemic, so many people decided that there was money to be made in the coaching industry and became coaches. But before that, before the pandemic, before everybody else went online, there were a lot of us that were already doing this work and already it's always been who I've been. So from the time I was a little girl, I was giving adults advice. I kid around. Well, I don't kid around, but the truth is when I was 3, I actually thought that I might be the Messiah. Like, oh, he's coming. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's me, right? Like I always had this energy of connectedness. And I think that as my life went on, and more of the 3D things started to surface, I always say I kind of come from like a Muggle family. I think a lot of that stuff sort of was repressed in me and kind of pushed to the back burner. And wasn't until, later in my life when I was like, I really love, this supportive energy and being able to help people. And then when The Secret came out, everybody kind of was like, oh my gosh. And that was just such a reawakening for me of like, yes, this is the truth I've known. This is where I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do. And so I think that was kind of the jumping off point. And then, it became like I went into this MLM and I made a ton of money using what I learned in The Secret. And then I was like, I don't really want to do this MLM. I really want to lead people, which for a while I was able to do in the MLM. But then it kind of got weird and I wasn't able to anymore. And so I kind of was at a crossroads where I was like, do I want to coach? And the answer was a resounding yes. So I started my coaching practice in 2018. I've really kind of honed in more on what it is that I want to do. I started with empaths and then I moved into dream design and I still, I created dream design and it's still a big part of what I do, but Erogetics is kind of the evolution of all of that, really kind of moving through those levels of consciousness and awareness about what we're here to do and what our purpose is. And so, yeah, here it is. We're in 2023. Erogetics is like, it lights me up in all best ways. And I'm also open to the idea that, it could evolve even more and become something better and more beautiful. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love that it was your calling from a young age because, usually when we have those gifts as a child, it means that's our soul path, our soul purpose, right? Okay, so I totally butchered the word erogetics when I was introducing you because I've never heard it before. So
I
can you let me and listeners know what exactly that is?
Yeah. So eros refers to life force energy. It's a word, I think it's Greek. And eros is about the energy of being aligned with the environment, right? So Eros is like the lit up energy, the arousal energy. People think aroused or desire is sexual. It's actually not. Arousal is all about like being at one with the environment and really sinking your senses into something. So that's where the Eros part comes from. And then etics is really just a fun scientific suffix that means pertaining to. So it is the study of life force energy and really just kind of like everything that is really what we're trying to create in this life, as opposed to kind of all of the constructs and maybe some of the distractions that aren't necessarily what it is that we're trying to create in this life.
That's super fascinating. Thank you. So, how do you use it in a practice?
So, the best way to explain this is when you're young and you're first starting to recognize the opposite sex, the same sex, whatever it is, there's this energy in you. It's almost like a bubbly energy. It's like giddy schoolgirl energy. And you're like, oh my gosh, he likes me. And energy that's able to kind of carry you through everything, right? Like how many times, I mean, when I was little, I remember being 13, 12, 13 and being on the phone until 3 o'clock in the morning and then going to school, right? And like then going to softball and like just this boundless energy that we had when we were younger because we were just always in this state of arousal with the environment. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Susie's house on Saturday and like so-and-so is going to, pass me a note in class. And again, it was never about intercourse. It was never sexual. And then, we find that person, we have the butterflies, we get married, we do the things, we become the identity of the partner. And now all of a sudden, all of that desire, the butterflies, all that stuff kind of just like whittles away. And when we're no longer creating that energy of like just I am just so lit up by my environment like a baby is like, oh my gosh, my foot moved, this is fantastic. Like after a certain point, we stop making that life force energy. That's like kind of when the fountain of youth starts to shut down. Our cells start to age and we start to have our body parts, they kind of start to atrophy and you have to have all kinds of surgeries to have pieces taken out and all these things. And the truth is that, when this happens, we recognize that we still need that energy, don't we? Like we still need life force energy and we're not making it. So what do? We siphon it from the environment. We try to get it from our partner. How come you don't think I'm beautiful anymore? Like, oh my gosh, I got this new dress and you didn't even notice. We try to pull it from clients. Like, I really need a client. Oh my gosh, I need to, fill this program or whatever it is. And we start trying to siphon this energy from outside instead of actually creating it inside. So Erogetics is about rekindling that inner romance, that reminder that we are always in a beautiful courtship with the universe, with source, and that literally we're being doted on and we're, it's completely devoted to us in every moment. And we get to have that giddy schoolgirl energy back, that like, oh my gosh, he looked at me. Look at how this sign showed up. It's because he wants to show me how much he loves me. And so that's what Erogetics is all about.
I love that description. And as you were talking, it made me think about like follow your excitement, right? Like follow what you're passionate about, follow what lights you up, like keep adding to your pile of things that make you feel joy, right? Like add to your pile of goodness. And also like realizing life is fun, right? Life can be a game, and especially when you're manifesting and you're into all of this. So that's super interesting. I love learning new things, and I honestly had never heard of that before. So how do you help people cultivate that feel like they've kind of been with that same partner and they're trying to siphon it from the environment and they're kind of stuck in that grind?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, making the shift between climax consciousness and desire consciousness. So climax consciousness is when like you're looking for that next best thing, right? You're looking for, oh, I need 10,000 followers on Instagram, or we used to need that to be able to get the swipe up feature, right? I really want to hit $100,000 in my business. Like I want to have a TED talk. Like we always have these points on the timeline that we want to create. And then what happens, it's almost like kind of like an orgasm if you think about it, because it's like, oh my gosh, I need it. Oh, that was so good. And now I'm in that, that afterglow. And then it's like, I'm exhausted until I climb up the next hill. Desire consciousness is more about like every moment being like titillating, every moment being from a place of arousal. Like, oh my gosh, what do I want to do right now? Like, what am I being pulled toward right now? And recognizing that we're not here to like check a bunch of boxes. We're here to experience. And with potentially 100 years to live on this planet, like, I don't know about you, but I want to squeeze every last morsel out of it. So really stepping into that mindfulness and being like, in this moment, how can I light myself up? In this moment, how can I create that joy? But in terms of, with your partnership, lots of times, there's that expression, as above, so below, as within, so without. So if you're starting to find that with your partner, you're feeling that need for external validation, how can you create that validation inside of yourself? So for me, Erogetics is about connecting to that sacred masculine, that part of me, that God self that is the universe, in my case, because I'm female, in a masculine case, that would be an inner female. It would be the sacred feminine. So for me, the sacred masculine is there to provide, right? The bringer. And I am the receiver, the dreamer. So my job is to create and to dream up as many things as I could imagine that I want to create in my reality. And the universe, AKA the sacred masculine, that inner energy is there to manifest those, to bring them. And the way that I reciprocate in that relationship is to be open and to receive and to be grateful. So if I'm doing that internally and I'm like, I am so grateful for what's going on in my life, I am so filled up by what's already happening inside of me, well, then my environment has no choice but to reflect that. So what that looks like is all of a sudden, instead of being like, oh my God, I had the worst day. Can you hold me? Like, I'm just, never minding what my partner went through or what their stress is or anything that they're going through. At the end of the day, I've already done that inner healing work. I've already done that like wholeness check. So it's like, hey babe, what are you doing tonight? Do you want to watch a movie? Oh, I was thinking I'm maybe going to go play my game. Oh, no problem. Okay, I'll catch up with you later. Like, because it's like, you have your things, I have my things. And when we come together, it's perfection. When we come together, it's from a place of what's the word I'm looking for? Connection and awareness and mindfulness. And it's not just how can we throw together two broken pieces of china at the end of the day and hope we make a teacup.
Yeah, I love the examples you use both in the coaching business and in the relationship, because I feel like those are so relatable. I feel like I've been in those places. I've wanted those check marks, right? Those boxes checked. I've been in that position with my husband. So I'm sure listeners have too. So I appreciate the relatable examples. And again, as you were talking, I was thinking like, it's almost about that idea of appreciating the journey rather than the destination, or as well as the destination, right? Because it's that whole journey that counts. And that's when you're really in the moment. And I mean, because life would be pretty lame if it was only those big highlight moments where we found joy and connection and happiness and gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's so interesting that you talk about the divine masculine, because it feels like everywhere you look on social media, everyone's all about the divine feminine. Divine feminine has become this buzzword. And I know you just told us a little bit about divine masculine, but I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about like what the divine masculine is.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever read the book. Of course you have, but the Untethered Soul, where it talks about the soul and how the soul is actually it's observing. It's observing all of our thoughts. So when we have thoughts, it's like, well, who's having that thought and who's observing? So the idea of the self, it doesn't have a gender. It doesn't have an identity. It is everything, right? If the self is the God consciousness, then the self is both divine masculine and divine feminine. So when you take this energy and separate it, down the middle, the thought is like, okay, it's a triangle, like let's draw it down the middle. But what I've been shown is it's a diamond. And this is interesting because it follows the human design model of the G center. If you're familiar with human design at all, the magnetic monopole, the place where like the direction for your life is coming from, the GPS, the driver of the vehicle. And so when you look at it from this diamond perspective for outward facing females, female presenting people, we have an inner masculine. We have an inner other. Carl Jung calls it the inner other. And so if you think of it in terms of almost like an iceberg, you've got the feminine and then the inner masculine. Now, the crazy part is that the masculine energy doesn't know that it's not on the outside. You're actually entertaining two different dualistic energies inside of your body and animating one or the other at a time. So you're not your inner masculine, but that is the God consciousness side of you, the divinity, if you will, that you interact with on a daily basis. So in order to see the divinity of you, the feminine, you've got to be able to reflect it off of something. It's like, tell me what I look like and I've never looked in a mirror and I can't see a reflection. I have absolutely no idea. I can't just touch my face and be like, okay, I know how to draw myself, or maybe someone could, but I certainly couldn't. So it's in connecting and interacting with that other side of us that we're able to see ourselves and to see ourselves in our perfection. Because when we look from the inside, our inner dialogue, I have this hangnail, look at how I have this gray hair coming in. We look at it from this imperfection and what can I add to myself to make myself perfect? But when we look at ourselves from the sacred masculine, from that external as the object, now all of a sudden, all that inner dialogue is gone and all we can see is the perfection. So it's through this relationship, much like when you first meet someone and they're like, you are everything. They get down on one knee and they're like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You have a partner before you ever even have a conversation with your external, with your human partner that literally is head over heels for you, that wants to make all of your dreams come true in all the ways, all the time. You are the muse for this energy and you just have to tap into it. You just have to be open to having that relationship with that energy. And it's right there and it's ready. And it reframes the whole human experience in such a beautiful, powerful way.
I love that description. Oh, there's the husband with the coffee. So is it kind of like the vertical aspect of you versus the horizontal, like the part of you that connects to your higher self, the more spiritual side of you?
Yeah, I would. Yes, exactly. I would say that it is the God self. So if we've got the God having the human experience and there's the God self and the human self, well, the outward facing 3D part of me is the goddess. The outward facing 3D part of me is AmyLee, and she's the human, and she has the human experience, and she has the human desires, and she sees the human separateness of others. And then you've got Eros, his name happens to be Eros, and he's the sacred masculine side, and he sees the connectedness of everyone, and he doesn't see her in her imperfection. He sees her perfection, right? And so he sees the world from that cosmic divinity place. And together they create this partnership of the bringer and the dreamer. And lucky for us, when we want to, we can step into one or the other to experience, the other side of that relationship.
I really love this idea because, I've heard of it as like the ego versus the higher self, or the human aspect versus the spiritual aspect, or the vertical versus the horizontal and all this, but I've never thought about it as the masculine versus feminine. But I like that definition. And I like the idea that we can kind of step into these different roles, right? Because we are living on 3D Earth, right? Sometimes we need to be in our body and to like go to the grocery store and have a conversation with someone, right? But you also have that power to tap into your spiritual side where you have access to the whole universe. So that's a really cool concept.
Yeah, in fact, it dates back to like ancient times. I think the word is called hieros gamos, holy matrimony. Yes, that's where that actually started, was having an inner marriage between you and divinity and recognizing that there's actually a connection that was forged before time of you, the person, and divinity, you, the holographic divinity, and then the divinity that is everything. And it's through this sacred relationship, this co-creative relationship, that this world is created. And so it's through our desires and our consciousness that this world is expanded. And that's why there's almost like two realities. It's like, there are people that say that the world is round. There are people that say that the world is flat. And depending on what reality, what construct you buy into and what field you're in, they're both true. There are people that believe that there's world beyond Antarctica, and some who are like, nope, that's it. That's the end of the earth, And so it's really about your model of the world and what you're willing to entertain as part of your construct. And so I think, when we start to recognize that this isn't a sky daddy that's like, you poor thing, you haven't had a new bike in 3 years. You know what? Here you go. Like, you manifested this. It's like, it's like, baby, what can I get you? What do you need? What can I do to keep you feeling safe enough to keep dreaming, to build my world so that I can keep expanding who I am, who we are as a consciousness.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it reminds me, like, I write about this in my book, every possible reality exists, right? Quantum physics even says that, like, everything you can imagine and everything you can't. So if any possible reality exists, you can call into your world any possible reality, and it has to do with your belief system and your perspectives. And like you said, like your construct, right? So yeah, like two people can be living next door to each other and seem to live in totally different realities. And I think we see that a lot right now with what's going on in the world, right? And they're both like adamantly insisting that their way is correct and the other way is wrong because it is, right? Everything is as real as you make it out to be.
Right. Nobody else exists anywhere else but in your mind. Like, where does anyone else exist but in our mind? You can't get inside someone else and be them. You can only experience them in your own construct of the world. And when we start to realize that, and it's like, oh, you talk to yourself, you talk to your sacred masculine. Yeah, like every conversation you've ever had with anything outside of you is essentially a relationship that's going on in your mind. You're basing it on what you think they've meant or what you think they felt or how you think they feel about you. And I think one of the most beautiful things about the relationship with the sacred masculine, and he tells me this all the time, is like, he's seen it all. The time that I was 7 and I snuck a pack of gum, the time that I picked my nose when I was 3, the time that I peed my pants. He's like, there isn't, with any other relationship, it's like, if he only knew that I had that fleeting thought about him, I wonder if he wouldn't love me. If he knew that I had thought about calling that guy, but I called him instead, and then it turns out we were together, would he still, like, there's always this darkness of the what if. Whereas with the sacred masculine, you literally have spent every waking moment together. So there's intimacy in that lack of intimacy, because it's like, there's no one, goddess, that knows you better than I do. And so there's an ability to open up vulnerably in a way that you can't with any other human, because you just don't know enough.
Yeah, that's super interesting because like that entity, that being, whatever you want to call it, knows everything about you, your flaws, everything, and loves you unconditionally. And what a special gift that is. And what you were talking about a moment ago, like, isn't it so trippy that there is a different version of you that exists in everyone else's mind who meets you, and it's so different than how you see yourself? Like, Absolutely. It's super trippy to think about. Like, no one really knows the real you the way that you see yourself.
No, not at all. Yeah. And somebody might love you and somebody might hate you. And like, oh, that post that she made on Facebook yesterday, can you believe that she said that? And someone else is like, the post that she made on Facebook? Wasn't that so sweet? Like, it's literally the exact same thing, but two different people see it in two different ways. And that just goes to show you. And like, never mind people, let's talk about time. Can you explain time without entering into the mind? Like, how do you prove to me, Chris, that you lived before we started this podcast without explaining it in time? Like, you can't even acknowledge anything but the moment in the moment. You know what I mean? Like, we make life so complicated, but at the end of the day, the entire universe exists inside of us. Yeah. And it's just our responsibility to decide how much of that we're willing to claim, how much of that we're willing to like say, yep, that's me. I am the universe. And the more that we can do that, you know, like, and it's kind of like I was telling you about on my podcast, you know, we were talking about the levels of consciousness, right? So, you know, the levels, like the first one is to me, which is like, everything happens to me. I have no responsibility and I have no ability to respond. And a lot of the world lives there. A lot of the world lives in a place of like, this is my lot in life and I don't have a choice. And then we move into, okay, it's all my responsibility. So this is by me consciousness. It's like, if it is to be, it's up to me. I have to make this happen. Well, now we're starting to get into, what if I'm not alone? What if I have a co-conspirator? What if I have somebody who's got my back, right? Like the universe. Now we're into through me consciousness. And it's like, I am a conduit. I am, you know, if you think about, you know, plugs and outlets, right? Like, I am the outlet and the plug is the universe. And so now it's like, okay, dream and manifestation. And there we have the creation. And I think this is where humanity is going. Maybe not necessarily in this construct of like, oh, a romantic relationship. That's not going to work for everyone. Maybe some people it's going to be like an imaginary friend or more of like a Peter Pan thing or whatever the case may be. But we are all moving toward the awareness that our thought created this universe, that we are not just people or ants that got dropped into to an anthill. It's like, oh, we're lucky that we're here. No, we are literally the co-creators of this space. And when we start to remove the guilt around feeling like we don't deserve to be here, I mean, this world's going to get, dangerous in a really exciting way, I think.
Yeah, there's so much that you just said that I want to respond to. I mean, first of all,
that was definitely a channel.
No, and I love it. And I want to like touch on all of it because first of all, when you're talking about time, I love that we're living in a time in an era where, science is backing up all of the spirituality, what mystics and ancient cultures have been saying for eons. And, quantum physics basically has proven that, nothing exists unless we're observing it. To go back to your comment about like, did you even exist before this podcast? And in the spiritual world, like we say, like time is an illusion, right? It only exists here on this 3D earth so that we have that, we're learning how to manifest, right? We have that buffer, that time, because if we just thought about what we wanted to manifest and it immediately appeared, and then 70% of people's thoughts are negative and repetitive, like that's a dangerous place. So it's right. We have to practice. We need that buffer of time. But it also makes me think about background people. Like Dolores Cannon talks about that a lot too. It's like, there's this theory that so many of these people in the world are these quote unquote background people, like the extras in a movie setting, just to make it feel a little more realistic. Right. But who's to say that like when you're not interacting with those people, that they're even existing in a normal life, right? It's just super trippy to think about.
It really is.
One more comment. I don't know if you've seen that egg story. If you haven't, you have to check. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So for listeners, look it up on YouTube. I forget exactly what it's called. Maybe it's just called The Egg, but it's the egg. So it's so beautiful.
You guys. So when you look for the thumbnail, it's like a cartoon.
Yeah. So it's a cartoon and it's like the most beautiful thing ever. Like made me cry the first time I saw it. But the whole idea is that you or the character, but like you are the only person that exists in the universe. And God has basically like created all of this for you. And it's just like this beautiful, I don't know, maybe you can talk about it a little better than I can, but it's just like such a beautiful concept, but also like so mind bending too, right?
Absolutely. I think what I got out of that, and where is it? Is that, yeah, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers is a book that I read that is really powerful. It talks about empaths and how we all have the darkness. And if we can acknowledge our everythingness, then, we don't have shadows anymore. If we can say, I am good and I'm bad, I am just and I am unjust. I have the potential to be all of the evils in the world and all the good. And so when you think about it from this perspective, she talks about how every one of us is a holographic version of God, meaning like if you ever get like a hologram on your license, what it essentially is a picture of you that if they cut it into little pieces, each one of those little pieces would still be a whole picture of you. That's what a hologram is. So if we look at this against the construct of creation, every one of us is a tiny, tiny facsimile picture of the creator. So yes, the whole world was created for just us, but there also only is just us because we are all holographic versions of the I am. Every one of us is a tiny little action figure, if you will, of I am, having the illusion of being not I am. And so through this this perceived disconnectedness is how we are able to have the experience of receiving and being in desire, because that veil of ignorance is the only thing that tells us that we don't already have it all, that we aren't already at all, that we haven't already created it all and been it all and achieved it all. And so in order to have that experience of mindfulness and being in this world and having the fun of playing the game, we have to believe that we are limited.
Yeah, no, I was just sitting here thinking, I'm like, I knew this conversation was going to be awesome because these are the conversations I love to have. And it reminds me too of like this whole idea, like Dolores Cannon talks about it, all these other people where, source or God or whatever you want to call him, wanted to experience creation. So he split off into these like trillions of souls and literally like the hologram pieces, right? Like exactly like you were saying. And these souls are going through these schools of life, learning these lessons, gaining knowledge so they can climb the ladder back to consciousness, back to source, bring all that knowledge back. But like the idea is like everyone's connected because we're all pieces of the same, right? We're all parts of the whole. Like there's nothing that separates anything. Everyone is just like a reflection of you. It's a piece of you. So if you're getting angry at another person or the outside world, you're really just getting angry at an aspect of yourself. It's like looking in the mirror and getting like mad at your reflection.
In the world.
Say it again.
The same thing if you love something about someone else in the world, you wouldn't be able to see it in them if you couldn't see it in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay, so I want to go back to those 4 levels of consciousness. And you actually only mentioned 3 of them. So it's to me, by me, through me, and then I know the 4th one is as me. And you explained the first 3. What's the as me? What's the 4th one?
So once you get into this awareness of this relationship with source and you are, the girl and the universe is the guy, then all of a sudden it's like, wait, but I'm actually the girl and the guy. So that as me is being aware that you are both of the energies that are having this relationship, because it is one thing, having the dualistic experience of being it and not it, in order to have the experience of contrast. Because if I am, then I can't feel the amness of me without the presence of am not. And so creating that polarity inside of the self is how we experience the otherness in order to see ourselves.
Okay, so it's kind of like what you were just talking about a moment ago, right? It's like we need that dualism. We need to kind of forget where we came from. We need all of that, right? So it's this idea. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, so if consciousness is just a ball and that's all there is, it's kind of like You remember we were younger and they had those Disney movie posters and then they turned them into puzzles. And it's like, okay, all you can do with this poster, you can roll it up, you can write on it, you can do whatever. But like after a while, it's like, what else can I do with this? Well, I could chop it into pieces. Great. It's a puzzle now. So now all of a sudden it's like, let's put the puzzle together. Where's Ariel's head? Where's this? Where's that? And it's like really exciting. But that's exactly what's going on. We had this consciousness that was one thing, and it's like, oh, what am I going to do? There's nothing to interact with. It couldn't even do that because there'd have to be an echo in order to be heard. There'd have to be someone to hear it in order for it to create sound, right? So the first division was duality. This and not this and that, here and there, light and dark. And so that first moment, any time that anything is going to experience contrast, there has to be duality, which is why when we look at the world and it's like, oh, these people don't agree with these people and these people are at war with these people, it's actually a really healthy thing, because that is literally the last thing that's going to get knitted together before we become all of whatever we are again. And Chris, we don't even know that we haven't already done that 250 times, 250 million times, that we haven't broken up, made the puzzle and gone, well, that was fun. Blah, 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 blah. Let's go build it again, right? Or now, okay, snap our fingers, it's a different puzzle. And we look at puzzles and we're like excited, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to put this puzzle together. But we look at our lives and we're like, I don't know where this money's going to come from. He left me. And it's like, all of these things are just pieces of that same puzzle. And if we look at them with the eyes of AmyLee, of like, you know what, at the end of the day, this is all going to work out. At the end, I don't know how, I have no idea. And it may be well after I'm gone, but it's going to be okay, right? Everything is for the good. And if we know that, that's where that AmyLee comes in. It's like, okay, this sucked today. I had the worst day. This client yelled at me. This happened. The bank overdrew my account. But at the end of the day, like in my God consciousness, this is all serving me somehow. I don't know how, but I know that it is.
Yeah, it really makes all your problems seem so small and insignificant, right? When you like think about the bigger picture like this. And the idea of duality reminds me a lot of sacred geometry, right? Like the idea that, like you said, it starts with like an orb or a sphere and then it splits. So if these are these 4 levels of consciousness and we're rising through them, and I love that you said, who's to say we haven't done this 250 times before? Because like maybe we are stuck in this infinite loop. I mean, like it feels like there's an awakening happening, right? Like consciousness is rising. It feels like things are speeding up. Like, where are most people? Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe during like Egypt, we were here, like maybe
Atlantis,
during or Atlantis, right? Or Lemuria, or any of the other places that we've ever been. Like it feels so cutting edge to us, but everything is going to feel cutting edge to someone who's never been there before. Have you ever laid, like when you're a little kid and you lay on the floor and you just tip your body a little bit, like little by little by little, and you feel like you're on the edge of a cliff? But then if you keep flipping, you're like, oh wait, there's the floor. But your body literally has the illusion of falling, even though it's not falling. And like, I think that's kind of almost the same thing. Maybe. I mean, it could be, is all I'm saying. Like we have this illusion that we're at this edge, but also if time doesn't exist, we're also babies still. We're also elderly. We're already dead. Like, I mean, if we really want to take it to the existential limit, like we are and we aren't. We're here and we're not here,
Totally. And like the whole thing about time as an illusion is it's like all time is happening simultaneously, like even past lives or parallel lives. So yeah, like we are always on the other side still, right? On the other side of the veil. I mean, it's super trippy to think about, right? And it's hard to wrap your head around it in this 3D earth, but it's like everything you've already gone through has already happened. Like one of the best descriptions of it I've heard is like by Greg Braden. He's like, okay, if you have like a still pond and you put like a stick in it, there's like ripples that happen coming out of that stick, but it's like the ripples go in like every direction, right? And that stick is the present moment, but like the ripples happen in the past and the future at the same time. Like it's all consuming, and it's totally. It's all happening right now. Everything. It's super trippy. Okay, so You know, like I was saying, it feels like there's this speeding up, this rising of consciousness, but so many of the world still seems to be like in that to me stage, right? In that by me stage, especially when like, I try to not watch the news, but like every once in a while, like it's just, yeah, people just get consumed by this, or like, they get consumed by, I don't know, like identity politics, or like whatever is going on in the world at that moment. So I don't know, like what's your take on it? Like how do we help everyone else rise up? Is that even our job? Is it, yeah, what about these people that are stuck in the by me or the to me?
Well, I feel like, everybody's on their own soul journey. I have a special needs son. He just turned 4 in August. And for a very long time, being his mom, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get him the help he needs. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out. And one day, Source was like, can I ask you a question? And I was like, sure. And it was basically like, this child was always going to have this. He was coming with this anyway. We never said, do you want a child with special needs? What we did say was, will you be the mother of this child who has special needs? And that just like rocked me. Like, I was like, it wasn't a question of whether this was going to be so. It was, do you agree to be the parent of this person? To which, obviously, by having him, I said yes, right? Because a lot of people would have done genetic testing and determined that they didn't want a child like that. And I didn't do that. I was like, I don't care. Whatever our child has is fine. So I did make the conscious decision to bring a child into the world who has a genetic disorder. And I think it's kind of like that. Like, we have to give people more credit. They're on their own soul journey. They're in the driver's seat. If they come to us and they want our support, they come to us and they want our support. If they don't, we really don't have the right to infringe on their experience. I don't think. I wouldn't go door to door and talk about the law of attraction and manifestation, because not everybody's ready for that conversation and it doesn't fit into everybody's timeline. But will I talk about it and invite people to come? Absolutely. Will I write books about it? Will I go live about it? Most definitely. And people can choose to come into that reality or not. Now, that being said, I do think that this construct is served by people thinking they're limited. And the more limited they think they are, the more power and the more control the construct has. So we've got two different realities. I think of it like this. It's like there's a tent in the middle of a city, almost kind of like the allegory of the cave. And in the tent are all the people who believe that, we have limited resources, the sun is going to die, the, global ice caps are melting, whatever, ozone, all the things, we're running out of oil. And there's all these people that believe this inside of this tent. And they also believe that you have to work in order to have, that there's someone always waiting to take yours, that, you have to work really hard and then, retire and then die and all this stuff. And then outside of that tent, there's this whole beautiful celestial city that is constantly being built up by the thoughts of the creatives. And every day someone has a new thought and a new beautiful awareness of their co-creative power, and a new piece of this celestial city pops up, a new land, and new resources. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that the sun is exactly far enough away from us that it doesn't burn us to death, but also not so far that we freeze to death, that it comes around at exactly the right time for vegetation to have, its birth and death. I know, and I think you do too, that thought entered into that. And what I'm suggesting is that it wasn't just the thought of intelligent design, but it was our thought. It was our creative thought. And it's through the people who are aware of this co-creative ability that are creating the expansion in the world, while everybody else is trying to figure out how can we fit more people in the tent.
What a great metaphor that is. And I like what you were saying before, that it's not our responsibility, because everyone is on their soul path, and there's going to be trillions of souls behind you on this journey and trillions of souls ahead of you on this journey, and right, and nothing is better or worse or good or bad, right? There's no label, there's no judgment. And the people meant to find you are going to find you, right? And you could just be that beacon, that light for people without trying to force it. And that's really how all the great teachers and healers and mystics throughout history, if you think about it, that's how they all were, right? They attracted their tribe. So I like that answer a lot.
What I believe.
Awesome. So do you have any last thoughts, like anything we didn't talk about that you're just like burning to share with people or you think listeners would find value in?
I just think it's really important to open yourself up to these conversations. As crazy as they sound, when people like Chris and I have these, when we go off, like half the things I said, I don't even remember because I was probably channeling source. You know, don't immediately decide, well, that's insane. Like, I can't even imagine, like give yourself permission. What if that was true? What if that was true? What if I chose to create that as my belief and my reality? How would that shift the way that I lived? If I could leave you with any awareness, it's that you genuinely and utterly create your reality. And everything you're living right now is a result of the reality you've created before. And everything that you'll create tomorrow is a result of the reality that you create today. But understand that your point of power is and will continue to be in this moment. It is this moment in mindfulness. If you think about like a 3-car garage and you've got 3 beautiful cars, but let's just say that 2 of the doors are busted. Okay, so you can only drive the car in front of the middle door. That represents the present. You own all 3 cars. Nobody's saying you don't own them all. But which one can you actually get out of the garage? The past? The past is in the past, right? You can't move it. You can't change it. You can change how you look at it. You can change how you perceive it. But you can't alter the past. You can't alter the future from here either. It's in the future. And the more you try to alter it, the more it's going to be in the future. It's like you're chasing it. It's in front of a door that you can't open. Your point of power, your point of manifestation is right now in the present, in front of the door that is open.
I think that's such a great message. And especially what you were saying in the beginning too, like everyone has free will. Everyone has a choice, right? Like we can't force you to believe what we're saying. You could take what resonates and leave what doesn't. You can choose to try our way and see if it works for you and try to manifest your life, or you can dismiss what we're saying because of fear, right? And I think because of fear, a lot of times we dismiss things really quickly and our brain doesn't want us to be wrong. So it tries to validate our fear, right? It tries to come up with reasons of like why this is crazy or why this won't work. But, at the end of the day, like you could just try what we're suggesting. Like you have nothing to lose. Right. But you have a lot to gain. You have like the life of your dreams to gain, actually, because you can manifest that. So I think that's a beautiful message to end with. So please let people know if they want to work with you, how they can find you, what your offers are, what you're doing, what you're up to, all the things.
Absolutely. Okay, so I guess the best way to find me is probably on Instagram. I've been doing a much better job of showing up over there. So that's the AmyLee Westervelt, really easy to remember. I do have a free Erogetics course that you can grab on Erogetics.com. It's a 5-part course that will walk you through the whole process. You guys can grab that for free. And then, I'm on Facebook and stuff like that. You can Google me. I'm sure you'll find me if you want to find me.
Awesome. And all the links are going to be in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, AmyLee. Like I said, I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I love geeking out about this kind of stuff. I love, and I learned a lot from you today. And I love talking to people about these things that I'm into and hearing it from their perspective, because you said so many things today that just clicked with me that I had never put in that frame of reference before. So I just appreciate you. Listeners, if you resonated with this episode, please like, share, subscribe, send it to someone you think will benefit from it, and have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. I'll see you next time.